Many companies have great ideas, strong products, talented teams, but still struggle when it comes to its execution. The gap is often not ambition, it's operating discipline, strategy, alignment, a scalable system, decision rights, and the ability to turn vision into measurable results. Today, we are going to talk about venture operations, digital transformation, anti-fragile growth, execution readiness, and how technology may help companies move from strategy to scalable. Welcome to another edition of the Smart Office Podcast. I'm your host, Hippolyte. I'm an AI implementation engineer. I help businesses use practical AI systems to improve operations, client experience, and growth. Today, I'm excited to welcome Leon Kasab of BOCG Ventures. Leon is a venture operator and investor with deep experience across strategy, operations, technology, private equity, venture development, and global markets. Through BOCG, he helps early stage and mature companies bridge the gap between strategy and execution, build scalable operating models, and create durable value. Welcome to the Smart Office Podcast.
Thank you, Hippolyte. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for having me on your podcast.
So, Leon, it's interesting to have you, and thank you for coming. I really appreciate your time. We're going to have an interesting conversation here. Very, very interesting conversation. Your work sits at the very intersection of strategy, operations, technology, capital, and execution. A lot of companies talk about transformation, but fewer companies can actually execute it. Your work focuses on helping companies build the operating discipline to scale and survive volatility. So, how are you today? How are you doing?
Great. I couldn't be better. I'm feeling very anti-fragile right now, Hippolyte.
Right. It's actually anti-fragile. I'm glad to have you here. I think the conversation will be valuable for many, many people. I mean, a lot of founders, operators, private equity teams, maybe investors, business leaders trying to turn strategy into execution. But before we start, right, for everyone, before we even get into the venture operations and anti-fragility talk, can you share probably your story? How did your journey lead you to BOCG?
Fantastic. Yes, absolutely. So I'm originally from Finland.
Okay.
I was born in Finland. My father is Italian Lebanese. My mother is Swedish speaking Finn.
Right.
And I was taught very early in the Finnish education system how to think critically. And after doing military service, I ended up in the US because Los Angeles was a warm and nice, change to that of Finland. I went to Pepperdine University, graduated with a business degree, and then went to work for Toyota as an accountant. And after about a year or so, I realized that looking backwards is very difficult or not so much fun for me. I'd rather look forward. And then I went to work for a company called Herbalife and as setting all their pricing in the world. So pricing analyst. Luckily, at that point, the company was going through a regeneration. They brought in a bunch of nice, experienced Disney executives, and I was able to kind of ride their coattails. Strategic planning, 5-year planning, quantitative analytics, all of these types of things became my prowess. And then I started setting promotions and analytics, and events became my experience there as well. And by the time I left after about 10 years, we had gone from $1 billion to $5 billion in revenue. And the company had recorded, I think, 23 quarters of consecutive earnings per share growth. And during this period, I learned a lot.
Right.
And the main learnings were that how you execute a plan is more important than the idea itself. If you say you're going to Mars, but you end up on the moon, you're still on the moon, right? And we ended up at $5 billion. And that's kind of where I learned how this works. And I took another company public after that. And then I started my own company called BOCG, and stands for Botnia Consulting Group at the time. and it's the
Mm-hmm.
waterway between Finland and Sweden. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm paying homage to my roots.
Right.
That's kind of how I got started, and my clients became private equity firms and startup founders. So I had the really experienced people on one side, and I had the not so experienced people on the other side. And I was trying to provide a service that fit both experienced and inexperienced people. So that's kind of how I got started. Sorry for the long,
It's all right.
you know,
It's all right. We have some time. Yeah. You've worked across operating companies, ventures, maybe venture development, investment strategy, and technology. What connects those, all of them together, like going back to private equity and experience or inexperienced people? What brings them together?
every company today is a technology company. If you're
Right.
selling shoes, you better be a technology company. If you're selling ketchup, you better be a
It'll be a
technology
philosopher.
company,
Mhm.
right?
You're right.
So what connects everything today is understanding the full life cycle of a project
Yeah.
from the beginning all the
Mhm.
way to decommissioning.
Right.
So if you were to take a Navy ship, for instance, from the time you set the hull and you christen it, you put it in the water, all the way until 35, 40 years later, you're decommissioning it and putting it in the museum. Every aspect of that timeline has to be planned for on day one.
Right.
And the only way to do that is to have smart people that think critically and who use technology for forecasting and for capital allocation when needed.
When people think about BOCG, what do you want them to understand about your work? BOCG, like the first thing that comes to mind, what do you want them to understand?
Execution is the first word that comes to mind, and execution based on a strategic plan and with gated capital milestones. That's what
Right.
I want people to think about when they think of DOCG.
Right. When you talk about let's talk about maybe certain things, maybe some meaningful stories. Maybe you want to share a short story about where BOCG help a company move from maybe complexity or stagnation into clearer execution and growth. I know you talked about how you started bringing businesses up and down from one point to the next, but can you share maybe an interesting story or something that our listeners can hear how you brought a company from?
I'll start with I'll give you two stories. I'll give you the early stage company that came
Right.
to us in 2019 that wanted to create flash loans based on cryptocurrency and blockchain.
Hmm.
And we looked at it and said, this doesn't make sense. Flash loans are actually, they're going to be illegal. So you should probably change your idea. But we like your blockchain concept. A month later, the US government called flash loans illegal. So we were right with that.
Hmm.
But what the solution we came up with, and this happens frequently at BOCG, people come to us with an idea that is maybe this big.
Right.
And we look at it and say, okay, your concept is interesting, but how do you scale it?
How do you scale?
So, yes. So, in the case of that very startup that came to us, we decided to create a alternative lending platform that was blockchain based that democratized lending for everyday people. So a everyday person can buy $100 token that behaves like a bond and generates returns that mimic that of institutional investments. So non-accredited investors had an opportunity to buy investor grade investments, and on the other end, companies with profit could get capital without giving up equity.
That's interesting. Yeah, and the second story, you want to share that or that's fine?
Yeah. The second story is private equity based.
Okay.
So a company came to us. They said, we've looked at this company for three times. They do
Hmm.
about $600 million in revenue.
Well, yeah.
And we want to know if you can get it to $1 billion. If you can get it up to $1 billion with a strategic plan, Then we want to know how you do it and how we
Right.
implement it and how much we should pay for it.
Right.
This was in the height of COVID,
Huh?
and this was in New York. So I traveled to New York. We did an assessment in a month. We came up with a strategic plan that had them at a run rate of 1.3 billion within 5 years. They ended up buying the company for $550 million, and they were very happy that we helped them unlock some of the economies that we found. One of them were robotics, and this was in 2021. And we came up with a robotic solution that really drove efficiency.
That's cool. Let's talk about strategy, execution, maybe operating discipline or things like that. After years of working with companies like that, like what you just shared, or at different stages, right? What do you wish maybe executives understood about execution? What do they miss?
Start with the end in mind. That is really what they miss. They have an idea and then they just start blindly executing based on what they have today, rather than saying, I want to, let's call it a big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG. Let's say I am your podcast and I want to reach 1 billion people, right? That's a big, hairy, audacious goal. Remember if you go for Mars, you end up on the moon, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
Let's say you want to reach 1 billion people. Well, with what you have today, it's impossible. But
Right.
if you start thinking outside of the box and comparing yourself to companies that maybe have done something similar, that gives you a benchmark. And then you look at all the industries that you would need to supplement what best in class is today to get to something that's innovative, right? If you were to look at NVIDIA and Jensen, he didn't settle for today who is best in class. He looked 10 years ago and said, how do I become best in class? And that's why he is where he is today. So for me, to really drive it down to an executive, don't think of what your resources are today. Think of what you will need and who you will need to work with, and what the team is, and what the technology requirements are in order to achieve your big, hairy, audacious goal.
When BOCG talks about anti-fragility, what do you want listeners to understand about
Fantastic question. Anti-fragility. So fragility, we all know, is something that crumbles under pressure.
Exactly.
Anti-fragility is the opposite. Anti-fragility, the definition of it is something that when placed under pressure grows stronger. So for instance, food delivery services during COVID.
Right.
Grocery stores were shut down and nobody knew how to get food and they weren't allowed to go anywhere. But the essential workers were medical providers,
right,
and food and hospitals, right? And hospitals and medical the same. So during that period, what we learned and what became an anti-fragile industry was home delivery. Now, the question then becomes, that's an example, but what's the hallmarks of an anti-fragile company or a concept? It is someone that is not over leveraged, that doesn't think short term, but thinks long term and can weather small disruptions. And when other people that have not prepared for bad times falter, they gain value out of those because they planned accordingly.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I mean, now that I talk about it, I think of it, right? So let's talk about a little bit about what you are actually focused on doing now. With everything that BOCG is doing across venture operations, transformation, investments, execution, what are you most focused on improving right now with BOCG?
Education.
Education? Yeah. Yeah.
Really, yeah, go ahead, please.
What made that a priority?
Critical thinkers are few and far apart today. What's happening is our students in school, our children in lower school, our students in universities are
Right.
not performing as well as we did or the
Right.
generations prior to them performed.
Right.
And the reason for this is education has not changed.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is we've instituted technologies that cause the basics to be dismantled.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we teach calculus?
Exactly.
My son's in University of Michigan, and he's going to be a sports agent. That's what he's studying, sports management. And he told me, "Why am I even
Yeah.
studying calculus? It makes no sense." He
Just
said, and the concept to me is the same thing with cursive writing. Nobody
Mhm.
knows how to do cursive writing anymore.
Yeah.
Calculus, algebra,
So,
chemistry. You can go down the line and people don't know.
so
Yeah, go ahead.
imagine if we're still teaching cursive writing in school. Like, I know they used to give emphasis on certain things. And when I look how technology has transformed a lot of things, like they used to give emphasis on maybe spelling or maybe certain things. But with technology now, it's taken off that because people don't do cursive writing. And nobody cares about spelling errors because everything is auto corrected. Maybe the words are now the sentences, are now the paragraphs, are now the book. So sometimes it's those things. So, given the transformation of technology, where do you think we still need that human touch? Like, where, when it comes to technology, where do we see when it comes to humanity? Where does BOCG things we still need that human to be in between?
AI is a tool for efficiency. It's no different than a hammer. Pneumatic hammer is better than a manual hammer and
Right,
all of that. The human brain can't compete with a computer once the computer is coded. But what the human brain can do better today is critical thinking, right? Figuring out what is needed. So, for instance, when people come to me and say, flash loans, for instance, right? Flash loans, I knew from experience that wouldn't work. And
right,
then we came up with we didn't say, no, this is a bad idea. We said, this may not work, but if your objective is to do X, then here's a solution that can achieve the same thing without having to go after flash loans in that example, right?
right,
So AI to me is very helpful. AI is only helpful if you know what to ask it. If you don't have the education to understand how to form a prompt, and you don't have the critical thinking skill to link algebra, cursive writing, colorful psychology, philosophy into your prompt, you're going to get wrong answers.
sure. So a lot of people, so as you said, if you could remove one repetitive task, right, low level task from your team's weekly workload or what you do on an everyday basis, like it's manual, it's repetitive, what would that be?
Basic research,
Basic
just
research,
data gathering,
data
I
gathering.
would remove that. However,
Yeah,
that's from an efficiency standpoint.
right,
And it's remember how I talked about long term versus short term.
right,
In the short term, I can have better efficiency by using AI. In the long term, what the challenge is I lose that skill set of gathering data.
data, yeah,
And then, so if today I read a report here last few days that said the risk to the employers or employees today is entry level jobs, right? AI can automate entry level jobs because let's be honest, when kids come out of school, they're walking negative cash flows. They're not actually adding value until you teach them something. You can do the same thing with a chat bot. You can say LLM, you can program them to do whatever research, whatever. However, 10 years from now, who's in middle management? If you don't have entry
exactly.
level, right?
Somebody brought this up in one of my podcasts, said there's a risk because if we cannot train the entry level people, who is going to take over in 10
There
years'
you go.
time?
Succession planning.
Yeah, we have to start thinking about it. But anyway, but This task you're talking, let's say research, how often does that task come up when it comes to this manual task? Daily task.
Daily,
okay.
Because I get decks sent to us all the time. All right,
Right.
we get the deck that says I need $2 million, I need $25 million, I need $250,000, and I send it to my research team and I say, okay, is this a good idea? And the first thing they have to do is research.
Research,
right?
yeah.
And
It takes
so
time.
daily, it takes time. And in the past, if you did a proper research job, it could take you weeks.
Right.
Nowadays, with Chat GPT or Claude or whatever,
yeah,
it right away you have it within a week, or sorry, within an hour.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
the interpretation is the missing piece. So that's where my guys spend time.
Okay, I see. So when founder, investor, executive listening today, what first steps should they take if they want to improve execution in their business?
Understand the goal.
Understand the
I
goal.
call it North Star.
Yeah,
North Star modeling.
Exactly.
What is 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What does success look like? What is it that you need? What is it that you want? Then we can build everything else behind it. So to me, that's the key.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that you talked about North Star. Why is it so important before your execution starts? Like, why is that North Star?
If you don't know the road, any road will get you there. So I like to tell this story. I had to own an exotic car club.
Okay.
And it was exotic race cars and luxury mobiles. So Rolls Royces, Lamborghinis, and Ferrari race cars. And I made it into a membership club with my partner. And you could pay a small fee to drive any of our cars. One day he drives into the garage with a truck. And I looked at him. I said, "What is this?" He says, "Well, it's a Saline Ford truck. It has 650 horsepower. It's fast." I looked at our North Star, statement, and I said, "Where there does it say anything about trucks?" He says, "It doesn't." I said, "Take it back." Because when you have a North Star, you know when to say yes and when to say no.
When to say no. Okay, that makes sense. Wow, that's something people need to know. So what type of company or investor or private equity partner is a strong fit for BOCG?
Any, actually. But what I'll tell you where we are the strongest is on early stage companies that want to scale. Right. So not just a mom and pop bakery, for instance, that just wants to do really good baking
bakery.
In their neighborhood. It's about growth and global scale. That's one side. The other side is the private equity teams and family offices and venture capital companies that have what they call zombie companies in there. They've invested in them, but they haven't figured out how to grow them. We call them, distressed assets. Those we are really happy to take on as well, because we are very good at taking a company that has the bones in it and figuring out how to turn it around and then generate profit again. So we're the bookends. We're on the early side and on the end side.
So you add flesh on it, right? So anyway, where can people learn more about you and connect with BOCG?
They can go to our website, which is bocginc.com, or they can just send a note to contact@bocginc.com as well. That works as well.
Okay, wow, great. Thank you for joining me on the Smart Office podcast. I really appreciate your insight on venture operations, anti-fragility or anti-fragile growth, as we say it, digital transformation and turning strategy into execution. It's really been a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you, Hippolyte.